Hey guys, welcome to the Cameraman Show. My name is Manav.
And I'm Kartik.
And in this podcast, we talk all things weddings, cameras, and business.
That was so good, bro. That was so good. Oh, I was so proud of you.
Getting better. So I got a message from a friend recently who's looking to get into photography, and especially into wedding photography.
Yeesh.
Right? And she's like, "Can you make an episode on like the pros and cons,
or things to consider, or something?
or things to consider? I think just general. Like,
Just general.
So you want to be a wedding photographer? What do you need to look out for?
What do you need to know?
If you're a new person, you've got no idea about like photography field at all. I mean, not photography, but if you've got no idea about wedding photography, how to run a business, that kind of things.
Yeah, fuck.
What are some of the things that we can talk about?
There's so much to unpack there, because I think it comes to different categories like self-awareness, creative outlet, investment. Like there's heaps to actually go through this. So maybe we can just sort of break down.
Let's start off with self-awareness. So why do you even want to be a photographer, right? One of the main things comes to mind. Obviously, like you have to do it for the right reasons.
What are those right reasons though? Because I could argue with this that this is my right reason. What do you mean by that?
Okay, well, I can tell you what wrong reasons are, for example.
What's a wrong reason?
Yeah, well, a wrong reason, like, for example, would be you want to get into weddings or wedding photography just to make money. And
Well,
that's
I mean,
your sole only goal.
it's
That's
funny.
your only goal.
It's funny
that's
because
your only goal.
That's your only goal.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, then you're about to fail.
Yeah.
Because I do know a lot of people who get into businesses for money, and that's not bad. I'm not trying to demonize money. I think money's great, but I think if you're doing it just for money,
There's probably better fields out there.
Yeah, true. You're gonna get burnt out very quickly though.
Yeah.
Because if it's just money that's motivating you, well, then you will stick to your current line of work. So I think that's number one in terms of what it is. But I like how every time we dive into a topic, we always relate it to self-awareness. And what I mean by that is videography is a very creative thing. So before you even dive into that business, ask yourself, are you a creative person? There was a book that I read, which was my entire journey as to how I became a wedding photographer, called Ikigai. Shout out to that book. And
I think I got that. I haven't read it yet.
Great book, bro. Get onto that shit. And the book basically helped me identify my passion and purpose. And the way it does that is it asks you 4 questions. What do you like? What are you good at? What does the world need? What can you get paid for? Now, what I liked was relationships, and I thought that was pretty cool. Anyone who had a relationship or to be around relationships was a really interesting thing. What I was good at was creativity. I was a dancer before I became a photographer, and I thought I was always some creative.
You already had like a creative
flair, yeah. Then I knew when I merged those two things together, it spat out wedding photography, which the world needed and you can get paid for. So self-awareness comes into play here is identify, like, are you actually a creative person? Because there's a conversation in my head about skill versus natural talent. You can naturally be gifted in something and not even realize it. Skill pushes that further, and developing that skill pushes that further. It's like me telling you, hey bro, go be a singer. You're not naturally gifted at singing. One could argue though that skill would push that, but talent wise, that comes into play here.
So are you trying to say that if you're trying to be a wedding photographer, just look at yourself, how you're currently taking photos with your phone, maybe? Like if you're already taking good photos with your phone.
Yeah.
Right?
Like,
and you already understand like a little bit about compositions, about like where to place subjects and like that kind of stuff.
I was recently having this conversation with a friend of mine who, you know, they want to start a podcast, and it's a very 0-100 thing if you've never done that. So I would say let's strip that down to the bare minimum, which is, do you think you can actually create content of yourself on your phone and put it out there for public display? Because that is the exact same thing a podcast would be doing. So if you're thinking about starting wedding photography,
you don't have to like invest in thousands of dollars worth of equipment for a podcast, and then realize that, hey, I don't even enjoy doing it,
or I'm not even good at it. If you can eliminate those two things straight off the bat, you know that you just saved yourself $1,000, a lot of time, and the disappointment that you'll face afterwards.
So is that, like, if we now apply this to the photography concept, right? Are you saying that try to take photos without getting or without investing into expensive equipment first?
I would say close. I would say take a phone. We all have a phone. Take a photo and understand what that process of being a creative person does for you. Do you get excited when you take a banger shot? Does guiding and directing something make you feel really good? Do you love working with people? Are you great at communicating, giving instructions? Are you okay to be in front of crowds of people with your phone?
That's a big one.
That's a big one.
Yeah,
that's
a lot of people, and the thing is, a few people have shot with me that I know, right? And this is the first time they ever shot a wedding, and they actually got like really weirded out that like we are like the center of attention on a ceremony, everyone is sitting down. The photographer is usually the only person moving around at the front.
Correct.
So all the eyes are on you at all times, and you have to be comfortable with that.
If you're not comfortable working crowds, if you're not comfortable being a voice of authority, you might struggle.
Yeah.
And so self-awareness literally takes care of that at the very first onset if you're thinking about becoming a wedding photographer. Do you have the skills? And again, I'm not saying that like you can only have the talent first and then develop it. Like you might not even have the ability to take great portraits and great photos. You can still learn those things, but is there a foundation here? Do you have the communicational skills? Do you have the ability to be creative to some extent? Do you identify those building blocks that you can go, hey, I've got a framework here to work with? Because there are some people who may just not be the most creative people out there, and they might not be best suited for this.
So when you say, which is what you brought up before, that you need to be a people person, what do you mean by that? Like, what do you mean that you need to be a people person? Does that mean like you have to be an extrovert, or can introverts still be good wedding photographers if your personality is normally like?
I think that's a great question because if you ask me like, am I an extrovert? More often than not, I would say probably like, yes, I am. However, my social battery does die and I need to recharge very quickly. Like I need my me time. But I know there are plenty of introverts out there. Like I think Taylor Jackson also, he's a self-proclaimed introvert, which I mean, his personality even comes through on his cameras, on his videos as well, sorry. Yes, you can be an introvert, but if you're not comfortable being in front of large crowds of people every weekend and you don't want to jeopardize that part of your life, that's something to be mindful of. So I think self-awareness really just helps you to understand who you are as a person, to see, is this career choice a right fit, before we dive into the nitty-gritties in particular.
Yeah, fair. And like now talking about the nitty-gritties in particular, there are a lot of negatives that come with being a wedding photographer, and I think people don't realize this.
I think let's, because we've written this out, let's go through it and you can identify whether this is something that's a negative for you or a positive, because these things for us were things we had to realize along the way, which now we've become accustomed to. But
a lot of them were like, oh, shit,
a lot of them were like, oh, we didn't even think about this.
Yeah.
So the biggest thing that I understand from wedding photography is the lifestyle implication.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that for a second.
You literally have no weekends.
Bruh.
So it's okay. So if you're a person who's very big on hanging out with your friends right now, right? You love going out on
Your social
weekends.
life is really important to you.
Your social life is very important to you. You love going out on the weekends. You love attending events on the weekends. You love going, because let's be honest, like people that do like corporate or 9 to 5, they love hanging out on the weekends, right? That's their time off. That's when they don't want to think about work.
And there are more corporate 9 to 5 workers than there are wedding photographers.
Yeah, so all your friends are most likely to be in the 9 to 5.
That's their thing, which means you might be a social butterfly, and you're going, oh, my best friend's gonna have a party this week. No,
you ain't going there, bro.
No. You're going to some wedding that someone booked into in with you 9 months in advance. That you now have to then have FOMO of looking at on your Insta story your best closest friends missing out with you not being there because you're busy shooting. And
this happens a lot, especially with us, right? And the main reason is because weddings get booked out like 10, 12 months in advance. Correct. Your friends sometimes don't tell you they're having a party like a month or two in advance.
Yeah, like who goes to you and says, hey, I'm having a house party next year.
Yeah, like no one. Yeah, like house party is something you decide last minute.
It's very last minute.
Even birthdays, people decide like 3 months before. Like no one decides that 8, 9 months before they're going to have a birthday and then, hey, keep this day free or whatever.
I am so guilty. Yeah. I'm so guilty of missing my mum's birthday, my sibling's birthday. Obviously, we were like a dig about it. But also, it goes both ways. Like your social circle and your core people will understand if you're passionate about what you do, that sometimes, look, you may unfortunately miss things. But I caveat, like you can take proactive measures to book out those dates in advance. It's just spontaneous ones that you might not be able to actually attend. So understanding that this has a lifestyle implication, which means that your weekends most likely gone.
Mind you, not even weekends. This is more about like odd hours as well.
Oh, bruh.
It's not only that you're now shooting on weekends, like sometimes you're finishing at like midnight and you're coming home, you're getting home at like 1 o'clock, right? Which leads me on to my next point, which is, say goodbye to having a routine if you're a wedding photographer.
Yeah.
It's like a lot of people that are like in corporate or even like, you know, that where you've grown up. Look, just generally as human beings, we love routine, right?
Structure
to your life, routine. Yep. And if you're a wedding photographer, you got to understand you're not going to have the same routine from one week to another. This is depending on what you're doing.
This brings me to two very interesting quotes I've never forgotten. Yeah. Okay. The first one was my iPhone wallpaper. I was a very wallpaper quotey guy. I still am, actually. The first one is creativity is the opposite to routine, which I just love the statement of that. creativity is the opposite to routine.
Makes sense.
As a wedding photographer, you're all about creativity. It may just mean that your routine is out of the window, which we'll dive on into a little bit.
And mind you, this is not just about obviously wedding photography, as you said, creativity. Like for example, people that make music or whatever, they'll be making like the odd hours. People that film stuff, right? Like they'll be doing odd hours. Sometimes like your creativity or your flair only comes like in the middle of the night when you're sitting and you're like, oh, this would be sick, right? Sometimes you'll sit at like your desk at 9 o'clock in the morning and you can't even think of shit because
correct.
it's just,
correct.
Yeah.
So the odd hours is very present in that.
Yeah.
The second quote is, I left my 9 to 5 to work 24/7.
Yeah.
And I've spoken about this a lot. It's a very interesting one, but I do love that quote because something resonates with me when I said, I left my 9 to 5, but now I'm working more hours.
More 100%.
Harder than I've ever worked before.
Yeah.
Longer days. I'm working weekends and weekdays because again, editing will dive into that in a bit. But I love that quote because it sums up a lot of entrepreneurs and solopreneurs and people who have wedding photography business, wedding videography business as well. Like you're not, if you think that this is a 9 to 5 thing, get that out of your head.
Mind you, someone might be watching this and thinking, what do you mean by that you're working 24/7? And like, I feel like the 24/7 thing comes in more with editing, right?
Yeah, correct. Like there's two types of, like, wedding photography and videography has two business aspects. One, on field, and two off-field.
Yeah.
On-field is the actual wedding event.
Yeah.
Off-field is post-production, admin, editing, like
accounting,
consult calls,
and learning,
which we can even just dive into. But these are the things that no one sees but you.
People just think you're just pressing a button. That's it. They think you have an expensive camera and you're pressing a button. But
and again, it bothers me because there's so much
goes behind
about photography that no one knows, which is why we charge what we charge.
Yeah.
Bruh, this gear, which we'll dive into as well, so much to dive into. Yeah. The gear's expensive, right? But coming back to, I suppose,
editing part,
and the editing part, like your times are not just going to be your shoot days.
Yeah.
A rule of thumb that I always look at is whatever time you're spending on field, you're spending the exact same time off field doing the editing as well. So if you're spending 16 hours a day shooting, you're spending roughly 16 hours a day editing.
I mean,
but
give or take. But
you won't sit 16 hours straight. You would spread that across 2 to 3 weeks.
And also depends on like you as a person as well.
Correct.
Like some people will spend way more time editing. Some people spend less time because the way they shoot or whatever. But the general rule of thumb is like forget that. Like you might think that you're only, I'm only going to shoot Saturday, Sunday, so I'll get Monday to Friday off. No.
But even with the editing thing, and I think the counteract to that is like you might have editors or programs that outsource like AI. So that's okay if you want to balance that, which again is to each their own. The other caveat that I'm passionate about that I don't think gets spoken about a lot is, as a wedding photographer or videographer or anyone within that wedding space or creative space, I can't stress the importance of mental health. It's not something that I think men, first of all, we share a lot about, but I've come to realize how much as a wedding photographer, I have to check myself before I step into the wedding. Now, what I mean by that is you could be going through, and I made a video on this on my socials, you could be going through trauma, a relationship breakup. You could be in a situation financially where you're stressed. And all of these things are going to impact who you are as a person day to day, but also what energy you're bringing into the wedding space. Because a couple should deserve to get their photographer at the most positive, upbeat self that they possibly could be. But we're self-aware and we're humans, and we recognize that sometimes photographers also go through life. And I said this in a small video on my Instagram, so check that out just as a small quick reference. But I remember that I've had a funeral that I've had to go to in the morning, and that very evening I've had to go to a reception because you can't chuck a sick day. Yeah. You can't chuck a personal...
Oh yeah, that's what I think. We need to talk about this.
You can't.
If you're coming from a corporate or any sort of a 9 to 5 and you're going to weddings, forget about it, you have a sick day, bro. Yeah. I have rocked up with a mask on, and this is not even during COVID, right? Where my nose was flowing, my eyes are watering, and I'm like sick, my body's like dying. Dear. But hey, like it's someone's most important day of their life, and you have to be there to capture it. Yep. Mind you, I get it, like you can send someone else, but a lot of clients, especially the ones that book us, they pay us for us to be there, not someone else, right? Correct. Now, so if you're a wedding photographer and you, especially like starting out and stuff, like you literally have to understand that you cannot take a sick day on someone's wedding day. Yeah.
It's very difficult to go, I don't feel like coming into work today because mentally I'm not all there. the couple don't give a shit.
They
let's
don't
be
give a
honest.
shit. Yeah.
And they'd be like,
and they shouldn't.
They shouldn't.
They paid you so much money.
They
like
shouldn't.
they deserve to get the best.
Again, you could do it in a couple of ways, right? Like I choose not to, and this is my own personal take. I choose not to be the person to be too vulnerable with my couples about what I'm going through, because
I think that's more of a professional.
That's a professional thing.
Anyway,
but again, I'm not demonizing anyone who is, by the way. Like if you do that, fair enough. But I choose not to because I want to bring a charisma and energy and a level of positivity on the wedding day. And I don't think I want to be that person where I'm like, hey, I know you're celebrating the most romantic time of your life, but last week my relationship ended and it's a very difficult time for my life. I can't be that person because I don't want them to ever think A, be guilty, or B, go, fuck, is like now I've got to deal with this bloke who's a bit sad on the wedding day. Like humans are nice people. I'd like to give them benefit of the doubt, but there are some couples who will be like, I just don't need this around me right now.
Yeah, and thing is like there's so many things happening on the wedding day. Like you're already stressed out. Is this as a bride or a groom, right? Because you've like got shit ton of things. The last thing you want to do is like, oh, now my photographer's like, now got to worry about my photographer's mental health or whatever, right?
So
you know what I mean? Like
I stress enough here. Again, everything relates back to self-awareness. If you are not the type of person to compartmentalize your feelings.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
That's
you
a big
have
one.
to
You
compartmentalize.
have to. Yeah. Bro, I can guarantee you, you'll go through shit and you need to just put that aside for a little bit and go, for the next 24 hours, I have to be here.
Yeah.
And it's look, people demonize that because they'd be like, oh no, I need to address my problems. You can. I'm just saying, just take yourself out of that emotional state for a little bit. But if you can't, know yourself about that. Know that you are not a person to be like, I can separate my emotions for a day. Sometimes a week, because let's be honest, South Asian weddings are week-long events. If someone's going through something, be okay with the fact that right now is just not that time.
Yeah,
and if you can't deal with that, just know those things.
Yeah, and obviously not even just mental health. We've got to talk about physical health as well, right? But now, because you don't have a routine, you're always out on odd hours. You're probably eating shit, right? Because you're eating whatever's available while you're shooting a wedding reception, which might not be the most healthiest food. And in turn, like you might gain weight, you might be unhealthy, which leads to further problems of you being like,
Correct. Yeah. And South Asian weddings are notorious for great food. Let's be honest, bro. Like you and I struggle with dieting when we know we've got March or April, some of the busiest months of the year.
Yeah.
And we're
shooting
trying to
back to back.
Yeah. And we're trying to be health conscious and, just, do the right things from our health and our body. But it is so hard sometimes to say no when you're shooting 16-hour days, you've got no other food, you don't pack lunchboxes or whatever it is, and you're just starving.
Yeah.
And you can't.
And you have like golgappe in front of you, and shit. Like
butter chicken, paneer, cheese, everything. And you need to be aware of this. Like you have to have this responsibility, this accountability to go. I
got to bring shit with myself.
Correct. And I need to be like I have to say no to food. But if you can't do that, or if exercise is an important thing to you, and you know that you've got back-to-back days, sometimes it's going to be hit or miss.
Yeah.
The other part that I think is equally worth noting is about what type of person are you in terms of, do you possess the business skills? Because being a photographer is the creative skills. Say you are a creative person.
Actually, definitely we need to talk about this because like when I became a photographer, like what I had in my mind was like, oh, I'm going to take sick photos. It's going to be all like sunshine and rainbows. There's nothing else, right? And then it hits you that you got to do admin.
Yep.
You got to do counting. You got to talk to clients. Like there's like so many different things. Like I feel like sometimes I think it's like 80 or 90% of like what we're doing is that.
Yeah.
Rather than actually like taking photos and actual photography.
Like I never realized that if I look at the percentage breakdown, and again, this is subjective, but I think it's 50% cameras and creativity and 50% business, people and relationships and networking. Like I didn't realize
I'd say
how
even
much
more. I'd say like photography is probably like the smaller portion of what we do.
Yeah. Like that's just one aspect of it.
Yeah.
There's so many other hats we have to wear.
Yeah.
And if you're a wedding photographer starting out, you have to be your own marketer. You have to be your own accountant. You have to be your own admin person. You have to be like the only person in your business.
Because you can't afford to have an editor at the start.
You're just starting out.
Yeah.
So you need to wear so many different hats at the start. And it can be very overwhelming because you might be a great creative person, but you might be a really shit business person. And I'm not saying I'm the best business person in the world, but I know I've had to learn how to run a business. And I know there's always going to be better people out there. But for me, it's like, okay, this is how I'm going to do it. Yeah. There's obviously a lot to take in mind in terms of the things that we would say be cautious of, which I know is sometimes can looked at as a negative aspect. But I also know photography is a very fulfilling and rewarding.
Yeah, I think we've like just scared a few people off. Right,
we've gone down the fuck this rabbit hole. We've gone down the.
There's a couple of more. Yeah, there's a couple of more things we need to share about the negative part. We'll come back to that. But let's talk about some of the positive things as a wedding photographer, right?
Yeah.
Now, first thing is like, if you really love people, you really love stories, then this is the right field for you. If you love, as corny as that sounds, like
you're right. Like, let's be honest here. Wedding photography is a creative outlet. It is a way to display your creative flair.
Meeting new people.
Correct.
Yeah.
But it's all in relation to a bigger agenda, which is a bride or a groom or any couple really just coming together, celebrating their story.
And usually that's like the happiest day of their lives, and you get to share that with them, right?
It is such a...
The vibes are always like positive.
Yeah, but
it's not like you're going into like a 9 to 5 where your boss is pissed off at you and you're having a miserable day. We never have that.
Yeah,
right?
It's such I say the word like honor, because it is such an honor to be part of someone's wedding day, to capture those moments, but to be the person that is responsible for a couple looking back at those moments going, fuck, I love these images. I love these. My memories are now preserved. It's a big responsibility. Massive, massive responsibility. But you are the person that are going to preserve those memories for that couple. You're the only vendor that sticks the entire day with the couple, right? And as a photographer, like, you are responsible for that couple's future kids to look at these photos. You're the person. It's a big responsibility, but it's also a rewarding responsibility.
Now, this is a very positive thing that we're talking about, but I have to take it back to one of the negative things, which links to this, is that now, if you're responsible capturing these, like, the most important part of like a person's life, what about like backing up and storage, right? That we didn't talk about, which is like, now what, you can't afford to lose these photos,
bruh.
Right?
If you do, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
You are in trouble.
Which means like you not only have like you don't have to worry about buying cameras and all the other gear. You have to make sure your storage game is on point as well, right? You have to have multiple backups of each wedding that you're shooting.
You have the burden of ensuring the safety of all of these images and videos before you release them to the couple.
Yeah.
And even sometimes after that as well, because let's not be on it, like sometimes they'll lose and you have to, store it or whatnot. But there is a lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
And you need to be comfortable with that responsibility.
Yeah. And I think we'll talk about this more a bit further on, because I think we are going to discuss about what you actually need as a wedding photographer later down.
Yeah, we'll talk about the investment side of things.
So when we talk about the investment side, I think we'll come back to the storage stuff.
But the other sort of pro point about being a wedding photographer or starting a business is you get to be your own boss. Yeah. And I know that one of the things that I've realized about my own career and self-development journey was how much I couldn't work for somebody else. And I've realized this within my corporate years, and I think maybe you're probably the same as well, correct me if I'm wrong, where you're like, I love being my own boss. I love reporting to myself. I love being accountable to myself. I can choose when I want to work roughly. I can choose when I don't want to work roughly. And you get to dictate that sort of life. Whereas when you work for somebody else, they dictate a lot of that stuff. You work these hours, you work these days.
There's two types of people out there, folks. All right. Number one is people that have problem with authority, right? Which means like you have issues with receiving orders from people. And so you're not really suited to 9 to 5. The other type of people are people that want to be their own bosses, right? Now, if you're none of those, good luck to you. Yeah.
Okay.
But it could be that like, hey, you have issue with authority, but then you don't understand like, while being your own boss is an amazing thing, you know how many responsibilities come with that, right?
I know.
And a lot of people are not ready to take on all these responsibilities to time management, whatever else there is, right?
You also have to be comfortable, I say this in a weird way, being someone's bitch at some point. What I mean by that is, okay, maybe not to that extent, but being a photographer, there are going to be so many people who are going to be demanding you on the day. They're going to be literally pulling at you sometimes. The respect factor there is a big one. But
100%.
Yeah, there's going to be people
if you have issues with like respect, this is not the right
job for you. I'm
you're going to be disrespected sometimes while you're working.
I'm very used to the fact that there are people who aren't going to treat with me respect.
Yeah.
And they might not be the couple. Like it could be just somebody else.
Yeah.
And you can politely just, give them a bit of caution. Or not.
But you might get someone yelling at you, hey, photo guy, come here, take a
photo. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. But you have to be okay with that.
You got to be okay with it.
Like, there are unfortunately some people who will disregard you because you work in this line of work and not treat you with a bit of respect. Yeah. And
that tells you more about them than anything.
Correct,
but you have no control over that.
You have no control over that. But if you get very sensitive around that, just be very careful.
Yeah.
But in terms of coming back to like, you know, being your own boss, I think the other byproduct to this, specifically with around to wedding photography, it is so rewarding and it's so fulfilling to be like, I did something for someone else. That's my product. It's my little baby. I created something. It looks sick. And they love it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Because if you think about like if you're working like a 9 to 5, a lot of times you don't even get to see what you do. You're just there to like you're a number in a company, right? You don't even know one knows your name or whatever. Yeah. You get your work done, you get paid for it, but there's not really any reward there. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
While you take a good photo, you put it online, you get people commenting, you got like people, you know, DMing you saying, oh, this is sick, right?
Yeah.
And then the couple's like, oh, this is amazing. Like it does come with reward.
You have such a high impact. You are one person, even if it's one person, you have such a high impact on someone's life. It is rewarding. Yeah. Like I have a skill here, you have a skill here that we give back to our clients, our couples. Yeah. And they are very grateful more often than not when they get to see what we've done for them.
Mind you, I'm not saying that you don't get rewarded in a 9 to 5. I'm sure there's ways that you get rewarded in a corporate as well.
I'm glad that you raised that point.
But this is more of like a very direct reward, like you receive back. It's like a direct feedback that you get back.
I don't want people listening in who are corporate workers being like, well, these guys seem to be demonizing 9 to 5 workers. That's not what we're doing. Yeah. We're just giving you a perspective.
You do you, bro.
You do you, definitely. Yeah. But we're just giving you a perspective of this rewarding factor is a bit more noticeable. It's very front of mind. It's very direct, and the turnaround to reward is very quick. Whereas a lot of 9 to 5 sometimes might have projects that are long term, and the dividends of what you're doing might not be shown to you until a very long time, and that's okay if you don't mind that. But this just has a different side to it. So from a rewarding standpoint, as a photographer, it's beautiful. It is beautiful. You get to capture moments. You get to learn, see culture, see people. Sometimes you get to travel. Sometimes you get to see the world. I know I've shared my experience of being a photographer who's traveled London and Europe, lived abroad for a couple of months and traveled around for the year and a bit. And I've genuinely had some incredible memories with people that I've gotten to meet, and it is such a rewarding experience.
So you're talking about traveling, right? Now, someone who's getting into this might be like, oh, I want to do this because I want to travel. That's not a right mindset to be in as well, because this traveling thing might not come for years.
Yeah, let me caveat, you're right. So I became someone who can capture European weddings on my 8th year or 7th year as well. But I had to live abroad for a year, and now I'm getting inquiries for Italy, Greece, and around.
And
Europe
mind you, this is obviously more applicable to people that are like living where we are, right? If you're already in Europe, then you're more likely to do destination weddings
someone
anyway,
who's
right?
in UK, I can guarantee you have already shot in Italy, and
it won't take them like 7 8 years.
And it's not like what's the big deal? But trust me, from Australia, it is a big deal. If people are flying,
no one's flying you. No one wants to fly you like 20 hours or whatever.
And that's why, like, it is one of those things that. It can lead to that, but I'm not. But if you're going and saying I want to just do destinations, you need to be very self-aware again.
Yeah, if someone's saying, "Hey, I want to be a photographer because I want to
travel and
shoot destination weddings."
You can. Yeah. You would probably have to start traveling locally first, but in order to get the consistent destination wedding photography sort of gigs, you're gonna have to do a lot more than just the average Joe. But also be okay with the fact that traveling sounds glamorous. Like, mind you, I have people who I meet almost every month who go, oh, Kartik, bro, like, you've got a sick life, man. Like, you're traveling around. You get to go to Europe, get paid for like trips and all that stuff. You get to have summer twice because you're in Australia and Europe. And you get to do what you love, which is all true. But they don't realize the sacrifice it took to get there. They don't realize how many events I have to miss personally to get there. They don't realize that I had to live abroad in order to do that.
And the traveling part, bro. Like, you're literally catching like 20-hour flights all the time, bro. I don't even know how you do that.
Bro, if you hate traveling, don't become a photographer. Yeah. Like, even locally, do you know how many kilometers we rack up in terms of our car, which is an expense? And leading into expenses now,
probably buy like an electric car. I think we need to.
100%. If you guys are going to become wedding photographers, buy an electric car. That's such a great point.
I think I need to get one soon.
You probably should. But I'm glad that we sort of segued into that because, and I'm trying to be balanced here in how we sort of approach this, but as a wedding photographer, there is an incredible steep upside to the expense curve. Like, when you look at how much money you're investing into your business, more than most small to medium businesses, because the tech side of things, right? Unless you're, a digital product service or whatever, like your business where you might not have too much expenses. But photography at the very forefront has a high up cost when you first start out. Because how much did you spend when you first decided that I'm all in and I'm gonna.
Oh, this is when I was back in the So like, don't recommend this. Don't do this.
Don't
kids.
do this.
But I was like I think I bought like a cheap camera, like a T3i or something back in the day, Canon, with like a Tamron lens or something, which was like not that expensive. And I did like
how much? No. How much? I just want to say something.
The cheap one was probably like, I don't know, the camera was probably like a 700-800 back in the day, and then the lens would be like another like 500-600, I guess.
Pause.
Yeah.
That's 1,100 something roughly, right?
Yeah.
You say, I appreciate the little flex. You're not that expensive. I promise you now, a uni student who doesn't have a job, who doesn't have any income next to them because maybe they're living at home still, who's just starting out, might be thinking, fuck, that's expensive.
Yeah.
Now, again, I caveat because it's all contextual and it's all lifestyle circumstances.
If you're loaded, then whatever.
Yeah, fair enough. If you've got money to spend in the high disposable income, go for gold. Buying gear might not be a problem for you. But I'm just want to call that out because I know some people can go, oh, that's probably, cheap. But there's some people go, actually, that's a bit expensive. But go on. Like, how much money did you spend when you first started?
Anyway, so I got that, and I think it was like a small flash or something as well. So typically around 1,500 or something I spent. And then I got into doing an event or two. I did a couple of events using this setup. And I realized like I wasn't really getting the look. Because I was looking at a lot of photos online, and I was like, why am my photos not looking like that, right? And then, I was literally looking at photo shot on like f1.4 on full frame cameras and everything, right? And I'm sure he's shooting with like an APS-C on like f4 or something, right? Like events and stuff. And I mean, obviously, I should have done more research, so I didn't have to go down, avoided this altogether. So then I had to sell all this equipment where I lost money again, right? And I decided to drop 12 grand on full frame cameras, lenses, and flashes. Wow. And we're talking about like 2013 or 2012, 12 grand, which is like,
that's a lot.
If you think about inflation now,
that's a lot of money.
That's like maybe 20-25K.
Yeah, that's a lot of money. But that right there is an example of what a lot of photographers have to do when they've realized that some of the stuff that I want to do might mean that I have to get the like decent enough gear.
And mind you, all I got was like 2 camera bodies, which is what I recommend. If you want to be a wedding photographer,
you should have 2 camera bodies.
Have 2 camera bodies because
safety.
And you would ask me why. Now imagine if you're shooting an event and one of your cameras just carks it. For some reason just stops working. What are you going to do? Like you need to have a backup camera body, right? And the way we shoot weddings is we always have 2 camera bodies on us where I personally don't like changing lenses all the time. So I just want to have 2 lenses on me at all times.
Have a body on you. That second body on you at all times.
So I have 2 bodies on me with 2 separate lenses. So I can just go one tight, one wide, whatever you're doing, right? So going back to the investment part. So I bought 2 5D Mark IIIs because they just came out around that time, right?
Yeah. And the fact that you bought 2 of them.
2 of them. Yeah. And this is all on a credit card, right?
Oh my God.
Right?
Don't recommend.
Mind you, at this time, I'm probably doing like some shitty job. I think it was like I wasn't making that much money, right? So this whole was in the hope that I'll make this money back and I'll pay my credit card off, right? Which I don't recommend doing at all. But I decided to go like all in. I was like, fuck it. Like if you want to do it, just go all in. Like stop thinking about it. Just pull the trigger.
Just pull the trigger.
And I think that's just how I've been my whole life. When it comes to like,
if you're
going for stuff, I just go for it.
If you're someone who's, this is a bigger conversation, not just wedding photography related. If you're afraid of taking the plunge and putting yourself out there and financially investing, sometimes this entire conversation just may not be for you. Like you might be a person who you're conscious about what other people think. You're conscious about whether it'll fail. You're conscious about whether you're even good enough.
Which is normal.
Which is very normal.
Yeah.
But in order to get to the other side, you have to be okay with taking these risks. Like I became a wedding photographer, not having one shred of experience. Look at me now. I'm not saying it as a flex. I'm just saying it obviously hopefully paid dividends. It worked out.
Yeah.
You don't need to fully be well-versed and experienced within your field, but just know that when you're starting out in anything, there is such a steep hurdle to it that it is scary, and those hurdles perhaps might end up stopping you from becoming whatever it is you want to go into in any place. But with photography, financially, there's a big hurdle, which is what we're getting at. Like you spent a lot of money. I spent about 8 grand. Didn't have a credit card, so all out of pocket. And I bought 1 camera, 1 lens, and I was just practicing, which reminds me to the other point, education. Like there might be a steep up cost here to educate yourself. Now, everything that I've learned, and I think for you too, shout out to YouTube University or Google University, but it's all free.
But bro, the amount of hours we've spent on like just watching YouTube videos about
10,000.
Cameras, about lenses, about everything,
hours.
like you really can't measure that because like it's a lot.
So if you're someone who I think you don't like learning, which is a bit sad. I mean, I think everyone
you should always
want to learn.
Aiming to learn new things.
If you're someone who doesn't want to put in the hours to learn, this might not be for you. Because I remember, bro, we had to take things back to the very simple state. Like, what is ISO? What is shutter? How does aperture work? What brand? What is editing software? How do I use editing software? How do I compose my shots? How do I light my subjects? Well, how does lighting fall on my subjects? How to do it like an event back to back? How to become a wedding bruh.
Yeah. And if you're a photographer listening to this, you might be thinking, oh, all this stuff is just like general knowledge, right? But people that are like getting into this, they're used to shooting photos on the phone.
Correct.
They've got no idea what the exposure triangle is, ISO, shutter speed,
no idea.
They've got no idea about what that is. So you need to spend a lot of time to learn how to shoot photos manually, on manual settings. If you have a DSLR, you're a new person, put that shit on manual and learn how to take good photos like that, because that going forward, right now, as you're a new person, this might be a pain in the ass for you. But going forward, once this becomes a second knowledge to you and you're always doing this, the best photo you are going to get is you're going to have to be in manual mode.
So there are a lot of hidden costs with photography, which is what we're trying to say. I mean, obviously the most obvious cost is just the camera side of things as well. The other costs, are gallery providers. I touched on this earlier, editing software.
Actually, I don't think we talked enough about the stuff that we need, in terms of just the gear. So I just want to go back to that quickly.
Okay, so you're saying...
I want to go back to that quickly. I'll go back to my story where I dropped $12,000, right? So I dropped Me personally, I'm the type of person who is either not going to do something because I know I'm going to half-ass it, or when I'm going to do something, I'm going to go all in, right? That's just how I've been. So back when I got spent the $12,000, 2 camera bodies, 2 lenses, 2 flashes. Yeah.
Wow.
And anyone who's looking to get into wedding photography and doing weddings, I feel like that would be like a minimum where you start off.
Look,
now
I want to challenge that a little bit.
Yeah.
So say, for instance, weddings are the end goal. And that's great. You've identified that's what I want to be. I don't mind if everything what we've said so far, you're actually don't mind that. The lifestyle side of it, the creativity, the whole couple celebrating that, the whole love thing, and knowing that you're going to be your own boss and you get to do if you are so far okay with what we've said, okay, cool. Then the conversion, the bridging the gap between not even shooting a wedding to then shooting a wedding, there's a lot of stuff that happens in between. And you're saying, I get you, I hear you. 2 camera bodies, flashes, 2 lenses, all of that stuff, storage, everything. Yes, you're right. You're absolutely right. But your skill's not there yet. Your skill's generally not there yet. So how do we get your skill there first? And we start small. And what I mean by that, we start in low risks environment, right? So what does that actually mean?
Birthday parties?
Yep, birthday parties. Yeah. Or forget that if that's even a risk environment, literally DMing almost anyone you know on Instagram, maybe personal friends, being like, hey, I need to practice some stuff. Do you have an event coming up that I could just do it for free?
Or even not even an event, just take your friend out to a beach and just take the photos and just see what that's like.
Learn what that's like. Yep. Yeah. But also learn what it's like to meet expectations. So say, for instance, someone goes to you, hey, I've got a first birthday for my daughter. And I know you want to start out. You should be the photographer that goes, I would love, if it's okay, that I can take photos for your event. Because that is the same in terms of the foundational building blocks as shooting a wedding. You have a client now. You have an expectation to meet. The only difference is you're probably doing this for free.
I want to talk about that.
Yeah. You have a turnaround time. You might need to edit these photos as well. You'll have to then have communication with a client because they're now a client leading up to the event, understanding the itinerary of the event, and then the post of that event in terms of how to deliver it. So all of these things are all transferable to a wedding. So as someone starting out, realistically, you're trying to bridge the gap from being a non-wedding photographer to a wedding photographer. The many ways in between is shoot for free, but have events that have the same foundations as a wedding, which means that the event will only happen once. You can't recreate the event, but you have an expectation to meet of clients who have just said to you, oh, I'd love you to shoot. You're going to say something about shooting.
I want to go back to talk about that, right? We've talked a lot about so far that how much money you need to spend to get into this, right? As there's a high cost, right? Yes. Now, to make this worse, you have to shoot for free at the start. So not only you're spending thousands of dollars of equipment to get into a field, now you got to shoot for people and expect hey, I'm not even going to make money for a while, right? Or another way where you can potentially make money, right, straight away, is second shooting for someone that you're, and that's I guess that's another pathway to get into wedding photography. If you do want to be a wedding photographer, then if you know someone that has a wedding photography business, be like, hey, do you mind if I just come along, second shoot for you, right? But just to learn how it is to shoot a wedding on the wedding day. And now, depending on the photographer or videographer, they might say yes or they might say no. Because I know a lot of people don't want someone new just random.
You're right. This is like a J curve, right? So for the first, I'm going to say 6 to 8 months, even a year, you're literally going to be under.
Trying to break even, basically.
Or break even. Under being, though, you're basically starting out as someone who doesn't know anything, and you need to then get experience. But how do you get experience without having a portfolio? Because the two are like, it's like a paradox. You need one to have the other. But no one's willing to give you any work because they don't trust the fact that you're good. So you need to start finding ways to get work. And for the longest time, I didn't break even for a while. And if you're someone who is depending on this to go off and be big, I got to, first of all, like, ask you to question why you're doing it that way. I'd be like, hey, can we do it in a way where maybe you don't have to quit your job, by the way?
I think that's a good idea.
I think that's something.
That's how I did anyway.
Yeah, like I didn't quit my job for a while. I made sure I had a bit of a foundation first, and then I quit. But I think it's worth noting that like your circumstances will dictate how hard you go at this. And what I mean by circumstances are whether you are single, whether you are married, whether you are out of high school, whether you are in your 30s, right? All of these things are big things. Whether you have a corporate stable career first, whether you don't, whether you've played around with cameras, so maybe in your, teenage years, you have a bit of understanding about educational stuff around camera, so there's a foundation there, versus zero awareness about how cameras actually work. And so in order for you to become a wedding photographer, there has to be a gap in between where you're just going out there and understanding that I have to do certain things first to get to that level. And that means understanding my situation, whether I can quit my corporate job, whether I can't, whether my partner's okay with me like doing this new adventure with my career, whether we can take risks of going, maybe I can give a weekend or two away. If you just had a kid, sometimes it's even hard, right? We're not in either of those stages, but like, I think it's worth noting that we're very fortunate that we started how we started. Also,
having a kid, it could be easy as well. Because then if let's say you're shooting on the weekends now and you got Monday to Friday off, even while you're editing, you're still spending time with your kids, right? Like you're at home or whatever. But I want to go back to the whole thing about having a job while you do this on the side, which is what I want to emphasize a bit more on that. Now, I did say that I dropped 12 grand. Like the people are thinking that this guy, like, dumb, crazy, right? Yeah. I still had a job where I knew that I could pay that 12 grand back. Like, I'm not like dumb just to like dropping like, 12 grand on something. And then people are thinking like, I'm dumb or whatever. But so.
Yeah. Like be financially smart, right? Like if you can keep your job, do this on the side, great.
I think you have to.
Yeah, but don't have an ego about it, about like, I have to go in all the time, full throttle. Like, yeah, that's good if it works for you. But we were teenage. We were like in our early 20s.
Yeah.
We could afford to do these things. We didn't have mortgages to pay. We didn't have partners or anything like that, right? Like it wasn't a be all and end all for us. And we were living at home with our parents as South Asian people. It's very normal. And we were comfortable. So assess, and again, self-awareness, assess your situation. Know that there are certain lifestyles that make it easy for you to divert into this. Certain lifestyles that make it hard for you to divert into this.
Definitely easier if you are single, young, and by yourself, rather than if you're like have a partner. Because then obviously now you have to worry about, is my partner okay with this? Because you know how we talked about not being able to spend, not being able to attend events on the weekend. Well, guess what? You can't hang out with your partner on the weekends as well now because you're always shooting.
So. And we're a great representative of this because again, two different life circumstances. You're married, I'm not. And you're in a relationship, I'm single. So I know automatically that I don't have to have that conversation. And it just means I have the word of time. I can do whatever the fuck I want. But I understand for yourself, you might have to be a bit more respectful.
Like I have to take certain weekends off. Like I tried it like on purpose. I'll try to take like 1 or 2 weekends off every month. And luckily, like we do get like a lot of weekday bookings as well for weddings and stuff, right? So it works out.
Correct.
But yeah, if you're like married or if you're with someone, you have to like, ask them, are you okay with me doing this, right? Because it does mean it's going to cut out a lot from our time that we spend together.
Like, I think now this is coming again back into that conversation of who you are as a person. So the other two things that I realized is, number one, you need to have great time management skills and delegation skills and the ability to really know how to work your calendar and schedules because this is going to really make an impact within your business, but also your personal life. And number two, a separate topic, which we didn't mention before, is you need to also be okay with not being able to people please. You know what I mean by this, because photography also, unfortunately or fortunately, is such a subjective field. Okay, it's no different from watching a film, from watching a movie from a director who you could love and I could hate. It's no different from getting your hair and makeup done by someone that you think is absolutely shit, but somebody goes, oh my God, they're so amazing. Good. Photography and videography is the exact same, which means that
everyone's got their own taste.
Their own taste. And you need to be very okay that you've booked in someone that you probably shouldn't have, that may not like your work. And that is very difficult for someone to not take personally, I've realized. Because I remember when I first started, I used to be so butthurt when someone used to say to me, oh, I don't like this. This is I don't like your work. You have every right to say that, and I should have every right to take that feedback on board.
And you should, going back to you shouldn't be a people pleaser. Now, if someone comes to you at the start and you're just starting out as a photographer and they say, hey, we don't like how you're editing, can you edit certain way? Generally, you'll be like, yeah, sure, no worries, all right. But the whole point is, as you get more into the mature part of your business, and which is what you talked about, that you need to be able to say no to clients. Like if someone comes to me now and they say, hey, we don't really like how you're editing your photos, can you edit them in a certain way? I'm going to be like, no.
Yep.
Like you need to be able to say no. Yep. Like this is my style. Yep. If you guys want to book me, this is what you're going to get.
100%.
And if you don't want to book me, then that's totally fine. Because like, yes, I will lose out on the money or that whatever. And that's like a separate topic. Because the thing is like, I'll still probably end up booking someone else on the same date anyway. So that's not a big deal. But what I don't want to deal with is like this, lack of a better word, clusterfuck.
No, you're right.
So dealing with someone where they have like a totally different expectation to what you're delivering, and then now you got to be like, oh shit, I booked this client in because I couldn't say no.
Yeah, correct.
And now I've got to deal with all this, and it just ends up being so much more stressful than just saying no in the first place.
There is a maturity that will come of you being a business owner, and that maturity is. It goes hand in hand with understanding that your style will change from when it first, I know mine definitely did, compared to where it ends up being. And the maturity also reflects in your ability to go yes and no to which type of person is your type of client. And no one knows these things at the start because you take everything you get. You're willing to literally change anything. You have to. You're willing to change your style to bring on clients, whereas now we're like, this is my style. Either you're in or you're not. Or you're not.
So once again, it comes down to how further you are in your business. Like if you're at a point where we are, where we're getting constant bookings all the time, we don't really have to worry about like this kind of things, and we can say no to, and we say no to couples all the time. So I think I do way more than you do anyway. Yeah. But if you're starting out, which is what we're more talking about here, if you want to be a wedding photographer, you're going to deal with some people that don't like what you're doing, and you just have to deal with it. You have to take on that work. Or not if you don't want to. But then keep in mind that you're going to have to keep shooting for free for longer.
And sometimes you'll realize that the client might appreciate your work. And that's good because that's what you want. But like any corporate job, like any 9 to 5, they could still be a dick. Now, what I mean by that is going, okay, so here we have a client who likes what I do and wants that look and feel perfect. But the other caveat to this is that doesn't mean that they're not going to be great, respectful people. That doesn't mean that they're not going to treat you like with kindness. Because I've photographed people who love my work, but have not been very nice people to photograph. And equally, it comes around with the extension of their family or the extension of people that they're close to. Like wedding photography is such a thing where you will meet characters, and these characters are people that I would say will either make you or break you, and you just have to be very comfortable with that. So don't feel scared by the fact that there are going to be people with strong personality traits who are very particular with what they want. Just know that it comes with the business. No different from how you're in corporate job. You'll meet characters. You'll meet your Karens. You'll meet anybody else who basically piss you off. But there's ways to be responsible and there's ways to be an adult around that. There's so much from this that we've sort of uncovered. And I feel
like there's a lot we haven't talked about as well. There's actually so much more that would just come to our mind.
Probably. I mean, I literally thought of something. I'm like, I don't even know how to segue into it. It was like, when we're talking about Instagram and marketing, there's also a part of that where I put myself on camera. That's my brand. That's who I am. Now, I know for Backdrop, you've not been very front of mind for your account, for your brand, and that's totally cool. But if you're someone who goes, I just want to run business and I don't want to be front of mind, well, back to what you said on the day, like you're going to have all eyes on you on the wedding day, first of all. But behind the scenes, you also have a choice whether you want to communicate that level of publicity on your brand as well, which means that are you going to be doing Instagram reels where you're presenting yourself a come get to know me sort of a thing, and does that daunt you? Does that scare you? Believe it or not, it's a great selling point, and a lot of photographers now do this because it's like, I want people to get to know me, but in order for them to get to know me, I have to be comfortable with putting my life out there. Sometimes it involves sharing about who you are personally. And that might not be a good thing, depending on who you are and what type of life you live.
Now, we've obviously talked a lot about the positives, the negatives of if you want to be a wedding photographer. I think what we haven't really dived into much, other than just cameras, is all the other investments that you need to make, right, as a wedding photographer. And by that, I mean, you need, like, as I talked about earlier, storage, gallery provider, right?
Website. Your own website.
There's like so many hidden costs. And this is, I think we've already done our episode on this,
We
right?
have done the hidden costs.
About a hidden cost thing. So I think you should probably go and check that episode out again.
Yeah, check that out because I think that's going to overlap a lot here. But you're right. You're so right. Yeah. And you know what's funny? We go to websites. Yeah. I, shout out to Wix, built my own website. Do I know how to do that shit? No. Do I have to learn? Yes.
And why is having a website important as a new photographer, you reckon? Because I know a lot of people that don't.
Yeah, there's
and I'm against it. I think you should have a website.
You should. You definitely should. Because it's just it's like picture a cake, picture layers I use this cake analogy all the time. Picture a cake and picture all these layers to it. These layers are metaphorical layers that represent your credibility. Now, your base layer is just your skill and work. The layer above that is your portfolio. The layer above that is your personality that comes on the day. The layer above that are these extra things like podcasts, YouTube behind the scenes, GoPro videos, reels that you make. The layer above that are like extra things that you do on the wedding day, like you give people albums, you rock up with a bouquet of flowers for all I care. Your cake, metaphorically speaking, is this tiered thing that a website just adds to. Fuck, that was a golden nugget right there. That was really, come on, man, that was a really good analogy. But a website does that. And it really just, it adds a level of credibility to your brand. And if you don't have a website as a photographer, you are missing out on potential clients.
Because a lot of the times, like, I feel like a couple would be like, oh, okay, let's say like someone got married. They told their friend, hey, I had this photographer, right, who was really good, and he shot our wedding, really good. Now, the first thing they're going to go to is either social media or they're going to go to Google and type in your name and look for who you are, right? And now if they search your name in Google, your business name or whatever, and all that comes up with is like just a Facebook page or something, and there's no website there. To what you said, I think that definitely affects your credibility overall.
It can deter people away because
they think you're not serious about this.
Like this. If everybody else has one, why don't you? And I don't think you should look at it. I don't think you should look at it from the point of differentiation because that's not where this works here. Like, oh, I'm going to be different. Well, no. Like, this doesn't work in this context. You have to have a website.
And now with website comes domain prices,
costs
related to like
the cost of building the website. And the time to learn, the time is a cost.
Having said that, right now is like the easiest time to get a website, right? So if if Squarespace or someone else, you want to sponsor us, let us know.
We really need the amount of like free shit.
I feel like we beg so much.
Please sponsor us. The amount of times we've referenced a brand that we use. I use Wix.
I use Squarespace.
The two most popular ones as well. But they really do help. They really, really do help. Storage, like you said, was another one.
Storage is a big one, bro.
Big cost.
And obviously you can go back to the other episode that we talked about, the hidden cost one, but I'm just going to recap again, which is I have a main NAS, which is a network attached storage device. Now this is like a device that has like 8 hard drives in it.
It's insane.
Right? And out of 8 hard drives, up to 2 hard drives can fail. 1 or 2, something like that, depending on what RAID configuration you're in, whatever. Now, that's my main storage device, and all my weddings that I come, whenever I shoot a wedding, I come home, I back up all my weddings to that, right? Now, that NAS device cost, like, if you include all the hard drives and include the device itself, easily upwards of 5K, $5,000, right? I have another one of the same devices as a backup NAS now.
Backup of the backup.
Right? So, I mean, this is a bit going OTT, but the last thing I want to do is like lose someone's wedding, right?
I've recently started doing the part where, and I only saw this on TikTok because it was a great idea. I don't format any SD cards anymore. I don't.
I know you keep the SD cards.
I keep them until delivery, which means I'm now buying, I'm not even exaggerating, 50 SD cards that's on rotation.
Yeah.
Because as soon as one wedding goes out, and when I mean out, I mean delivered, only then will that card now be formatted.
Yeah.
I'm never going to take that chance.
I don't do that.
That's okay.
I'm just better with my storage.
Yeah,
so.
you're just better. I'm a truth. I get it. But
yeah, anyways, back to what I was saying.
Yeah.
Like, so second NAS, right, backs up the first NAS.
Yeah.
Now you got another 8 hard drives in this NAS, right?
Yeah.
And 2 of these can fail as well. They're duplicated. And now not only is this, now that's another 5K probably, right? So we're already up to like 10 grand.
Sure.
And now everything on those 2 NASs is backed up online on a third online storage, which is I use Dropbox, right? So I back up everything. Now, you're thinking, why the fuck were you doing that, Manu? Right? Why are you wasting so much money? Now imagine, worst case scenario, my house catches fire.
God forbid.
Right? And both of the NASs are just destroyed in fire. Then what are you going to do?
You cry.
This is why you need an online backup storage as well, which is why I use Dropbox. I think there's a lot of different ones out there.
Blaze, I think there's another one.
Yeah, another one. Yeah. So now not only you have to spend all that money in storage, like local storage. Now you're paying like a yearly or a monthly fee for like an online storage as well, right? And these costs add up. Yeah. And I think mine is more of an extreme case scenario because I do photo and video both. So correct. I need a lot of storage.
Take it with a pinch of salt. Like if you're a person who just does photos, storage is important, but it may not be as not to the detriment as video, of course. But also bear in mind, switching to the positive, as a photographer, there are some great photographers who have the right to charge a decent amount. So I know that we kind of looked at it from, if you're doing it from a monetary perspective, this may not be the right thing. But as a byproduct of, if you love it for the right reasons, a byproduct here, money is a very positive upside to this. Yeah. Yes, photographers charge an arm and a leg. If I think about this, I think on a wedding day, the biggest cost to a couple is the venue. And dare I say the second biggest cost to a couple are photo video.
No, I would say decor a lot of the time.
Actually decor. Maybe the third cost then, photo video. Yeah. Still decent cost. But
actually,
what?
You reckon?
What,
I would say even like no, you're
food.
Right.
No. Oh, no, I think decor, because I've heard some real like crazy quotes from people.
Because what about food?
Yeah, but I know decor companies to cost like 100 grand.
No, as in I would say food would be the third, then photographer probably, wouldn't it?
Oh, no. Oh.
Like per head. Think about 300 people per head. Yeah, I would say so.
Maybe.
But let's say, okay, it's one of the top 5.
Just a caveat. Photo videos are within the top 5.
Yeah.
Now, yes, if we so far haven't managed to scare you, and by the way, we're just giving you a realistic perspective. So this isn't about scaring anyone.
At the end of the day, make your own decision.
Yeah, correct. And by the way, like I know photographers who know all these things and still think it's the best job in the world. I think I've actually said it to a few people. I'm like, photography is a really fulfilling and great job, but a lot of downsides too sometimes. The income is a byproduct of this. I
think that comes with like any field you're in. If you love what you do, you're going to end up making more money than you ever thought of, right?
That is true.
But if you go into it thinking that you're going to make a lot of money, then you're probably not going to do it.
That is true. That is true. So yeah, you're right. It is a byproduct. I just know that as photographers, we charge a fair bit, but for these reasons, the implications on one's life as a photographer from a social perspective, from a financial perspective, from an educational perspective, time perspective, everything. It justifies it 100,000% for why we charge what we charge. And you know what? If there is a client who's now listened to this full video, thank you so much, by the way, for making it to the end, because it really shows that you're actually curious enough to know what this side of life is like for a photographer. Because it boils my blood when someone says to me, "Oh, you're just a photographer. You just take it. You press a button. Oh, you're just a videographer." No.
Hey, photo wale.
Take a photo, bhaiya. Photo. Yeah.
Photo guy.
Photo guy.
Yeah. I've got a photo guy before.
Oh, have you?
Yeah, photo guy.
I get bhai sahab.
Some uncle like, hey, photo guy.
Bhai sahab, idhar aa.
Which goes back to, if you want to get into this for respect, this ain't the right. Nah.
I don't know if it's a flex.
Usually people are very respectful, and I'm thankful. Like a lot of most of the time, people are very respectful to you. Like you're not gonna have, but you're always gonna have like, and you're gonna have to deal with drunk uncles on the dance floor and shit, bro. As a photographer, which we didn't talk about at all.
Yeah, true.
Right?
Just drunk people in general.
Drunk people in general on the dance floor, rowdy people. You're gonna have to learn to navigate that and not get pissed off, not take it personally. All that.
If you're someone who gets easily triggered, which is AKA also me, I've learned to control.
I know people that get easily triggered more than you.
Oh, really?
100%. You still alright?
I'm alright.
Yeah. But bro, if you get triggered by like the smallest things, where like someone's gonna like pull you, bro, how many times people just hold your arm and just pull you across a dance floor? Tell me that. And bro, hold on. I have seen this happen to you like about 5 to 10 times on the same night.
I legit. So this is what
happened to me as well.
This is what I actually do now.
Yeah.
Now I'm a bit cutthroat. So grab my arm. Do you guys grab it? But see how I'm not looking at you? You can stop now. It's fucking weird. So I've had people who grab my arm, and I don't say anything because I don't want to be too blunt here. But I don't do anything at all until they stop grabbing my arm. So they'll grab my arm. I'll look there. Because I want them to realize that I'm looking there. You've again, personal barriers here. This is my bubble space. You've grabbed me, which you shouldn't be doing. Because you can be like, excuse me. When you're done, do you mind if we can come take a photo? They've grabbed me.
This happens all the time.
All the fucking time.
Yeah.
They've grabbed me and I've just looked at my arm because I'm counting the seconds before they let go. And I'm not paying attention to them when they're talking to me. I know that they're looking at my face and all I can see is that they're looking at me grabbing my arm. And I want them to observe that because it's me telling them to, can you kindly fuck off and not touch me? And that's my way of doing that, which is when I look at my arm.
You say all this, but I've seen you just go and get pulled all the time anyway. So whatever this guy's talking about, right, is probably just trying to be a,
It's because I'm a little bitch.
Yeah. Half the time you just go along with it anyway.
Like,
yeah.
Unless it's a girl who touches me.
Sure.
Then I'd be like, I don't mind.
Yeah.
I'd be like, oh, sorry. You can grab my arm. But if it's an auntie and uncle, don't fucking touch me.
No one's gonna hire you after this. Save your daughters. Save your.
I get cancelled. Yeah. But it happens all the time.
Yeah.
So if you're not someone who's not comfortable around like personal space, don't be a wedding photographer.
Yeah.
But if you don't mind, then it's a good job.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, like to finish this whole segment off, it is quite rewarding. Yeah. Now, if we want to talk about like the like an overall thing, like I love being a wedding. I love shooting weddings.
I enjoy it. I think
certain things would I change? Yes.
Yeah.
But certain things you don't have control over.
Like if it fits your lifestyle and personality, great. Also, I don't know, and this is just an honest segment, like I don't know whether I can do this for the next 20, 30 years, because you know how people are in corporate till they're 65. I don't know if I could be a photographer till I'm 65.
Yeah, because there's a lot of physical side of this. We haven't talked about this at all.
We did. We're going to the gym, the whole food side of it. It ties in with that. Like realistically, and I think there's like a shelf life of a photographer.
Okay.
What I mean by that is the next generation will come in, and by the time they're 20, I'll most likely be 40. And I have to question whether they'll look at us and go, can we relate? Because I stress that there is some level of relation you would want to have with your photographer. The banter, to an extent, hang on.
No, because I know some photographers that are like 50, 55, right? And they're still shooting, right? But I do get where you're coming from as well. Because it's very much like
ask yourself, is it a commonality? Is it a common thing?
Yeah.
Do you see it every weekend? No, you don't. So I know for a fact that by the time I get to 40, there's going to be it's like a bell curve.
I would say probably 45, 50. Not 40 is a bit. Cause I know so many photographers that are 40.
You're right. Let's just push it to 50.
Yeah.
When you're evidently old.
Yeah.
Right?
Like normal retirement age for a corporate job would be 65. Like 65, 67. I would say photographers mostly just go out at like 50 and like 50, 55
Also,
max.
you're not physically capable like you used to be. You can't do
unless you look after yourself, I guess.
Yeah,
then it's also hard to look after yourself when you have like no routine and stuff as well, right?
Correct.
Yeah. But mind you, if you're thinking about what do you mean by like it's not physically possible, it's like the cameras, bro. Especially you
go and hold my Canon.
You shoot with R3, and thank God I didn't shoot with the big cameras like that, right? Like I'm more of a Sony person, which is like more compact cameras.
If you want a portable gym membership, become a wedding photographer and go shoot on Canon models. You'll thank me later.
Like this guy's camera, bro. I'll be like holding it. Like
it's
literally
a dumbbell.
Like 2 minutes later, I'm like, I need to put this down, right?
Yeah.
And now imagine doing that like week in, week out for like 10 hours a day, right? Yeah.
It's weird because I never realized the physical, like demanding nature of it.
And you're running around a lot.
And you're running around a lot. So I think about it from a longevity perspective. If you want a career where you're in this till 65, I don't think you can't. I don't think you should say wedding photographers can't do that. No.
Yeah. I'm sure there's someone out there.
But I think you should be self-aware enough to go, it would just be harder. And if you want to go hard out to your 65, physically, you may not have the ability to do that.
Or you got to stay on top of your fitness like crazy. But then again, it comes down to like being relatable, right? Like if you're like 65, it's very hard to relate to a couple that's like 25, right?
Yeah.
And not only just relating to couple, it's like your style's outdated.
Yeah.
Because photography, you got to keep keep up with the style that's going on, right?
Oh
Now, if usually like if you're old person, right? No shade to old people, but it is true. It's harder to change when you're old and harder to mold into.
You're less moldable.
Yeah,
like you're not on TikTok looking at unless you grew up in the generation that is TikTok.
Yeah.
But you're not looking at what's currently trending. Like you know, right now, blurry photos and flash photography and that paparazzi sort of vibe is definitely a thing.
Yeah,
but there are photographers who'd be like, that's not me.
Yeah.
And that's fine because that's a subjective thing anyways. Yeah. But realistically speaking, you need to keep with the times, right? It's just a simple way of putting it. And sometimes being 65 means you may not be able to be update with what's trending because you don't see it that way. You genuinely don't. I wouldn't be surprised.
Also, most gone.
I wouldn't be surprised if couples in 2040 start going, we just want like photos on Polaroids now. Because it's a face that's just come back. We don't even want your DSLR anymore, right?
Yeah.
Whatever that is. Or they're like, oh, we want you to make an NFT out of our, I don't know, because NFTs are a big thing. I'm just
But they were a big thing. They're already dead now.
Yeah, I know.
I feel sorry for everyone that invested in this shit.
But there's probably random things that photographers, when they're 65, they just cannot mold into.
Yeah.
Whereas anyone who's 20 goes, oh yeah, that's
I want to learn new things.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah. And also when you're old, you can't be like dealing with like young people. Don't you reckon? Like if you're like 65, you probably get annoyed at like all the shit that young people do. Because if you think about all the old people that you know, right?
Yeah, I don't. It's like me saying right now, I don't want to speak to 16-year-olds. They're the next generation, I suppose. They're obviously smart and educated, I suppose.
Yeah. But they are, like, for us, they are still a bit annoying.
Yeah, they're immature. Right? I'm sure when I'm 65, I'm going to look at a 20-year-old.
Like a 25-year-old.
And they're going to be like, oh, so we want our wedding to be different. I'm like, sweetheart,
And then you've lived your whole life. You're like, yeah, this ain't
different.
Yeah.
I would not have the patience for that shit.
Yeah.
So
back to the point we're talking about.
Yeah.
If you're getting into photography to have like a long-term career, that's something to think about, because you might feel like after you're like 40, 45, 50, you might not want to do this after a while. And then eventually, obviously, there is a lot of other things you can transition into out of this, right? Now, for example, us starting this podcast is one of the things that we
didn't know this was going to happen.
And we're not like, obviously we're not doing this for money, right? We're just starting this because we genuinely enjoy doing this. And it's just like a catch up with a mate, even though we're not friends. It's a mate,
fuck that
guy. Which we talked about in the last podcast. But it's a way to just catch up, right? With a friend or whatever, or and eventually maybe this will lead to something.
Yeah, but
right?
it's what I said back to earlier, right? Like we do this because we love it.
Yeah.
If money comes from it, it's a byproduct of that. We're not focusing purely on money at this point, right? It's not something that's a byproduct. Oh, it's not something going, we need to do this and this is what's going to happen. It's like we're open-ended to what may follow from this.
And also, like, as I was saying, so you, after you feel like you don't want to do this and you're like 40, 45, 50, maybe the next step you can take is like going to like education side of things,
mentoring,
where you can teach other people how to be photography or whatever, right?
Within this career. Like, don't think that this is the only career and that's it. Like, no, there are so many other opportunities that could come from it. That's not just wedding related orientated, and you can do a few things off the back of you being a wedding photographer for so many years.
You could even go back to corporate, but in this field now, because you've got all this experience of doing photography and video.
It's so transferable.
Stuff, right?
You might go, hey, you know what? I have the skills of photographing, which you would. So then let's apply that to corporate, a slower paced environment. Doing corporate headshots.
Way less stressful.
There's all real estate.
Yeah.
Real estate. There's always something else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm not trying to discourage you. I'm not trying to also encourage you. I think we're just
paint a realistic picture.
Yeah, like we're trying to go, this is what's up. You either fit the narrative or you don't. And that's okay. It's no different from any other job, by the way. Like even 9 to 5, we could make a similar comparative example to this about how, you know, running your own boss is better than doing a 9 to 5 for a corporate company. Like I'm sure the grass always looks green on the other side, but take this information and apply it to what you think is relevant for you. And if you guys enjoyed this video, let us know. Let us know what your favorite parts were. Email us at thecameraman@gmail.com and comment down below.
The cameraman with the MEN, because someone's like, is it MAN?
Yeah, it's MEN.
MEN.
Yeah, pick up there.
Cameraman show. Yeah.
And let us know your thoughts.
Yeah. Or comment below, do all the good stuff, like, subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.